In the previous video, we talked about loops, which allow you to repeat an operation a certain number of times. In the other previous videos, we talked about variables, which are containers that can store a value. I am now going to merge these two notions, loops and variables, to present you once again something very useful in Unity, but also in programming in general. These are arrays and looping through an array. For this, I'm going to go back to our loop script. We can reuse an existing script to start this a little bit faster. I'm deleting the existing code to get a clean file to work with. And I'm going to start by explaining to you what an array is. When we saw the variables, I told you that a variable was a box in which you could put a value, for example 6. If I want to create several variables, several values. Imagine that I need to store several pieces of information about, well, for my character. For example, what could we have? We could have his equipment. What is his weapon 1, his weapon 2, weapon 3, his shield, his armor, his helmet. We could create values for each one and store the information in a lot of variables. In the code, it will be like this. I can create a variable int var1. Then I can do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can do this, it's quite possible and it works. Again, you understand that this is not clean programming. It's not ideal at all. It's not at all practical to have that, and I only have 10, but if I have 100, it's the same thing. I'll have to rewrite all that 100 times. So in real life, that's not how we proceed. In C#, we have what are called arrays. So we could imagine a piece of furniture. I told you that a variable was a drawer like this. We could say that an array is more like a piece of furniture, very large like this. And in this piece of furniture, we have several drawers. And in each drawer, we can store a variable. We can even go further in the arrays. We can have a piece of furniture with several dimensions. We could very well have a kind of piece of furniture like that, with lots of drawers, and each drawer would have its coordinates. So either we count like that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or if it's really a multi-dimensional piece of furniture, we can find them by coordinates. This drawer here is row line 1, column 1. This one is row 1, column 2. This one is row 2, column 1. This one is 2, 2, and so on. So that's an array. In programming, how do you make an array? If you want to create an array of int, I'll call it tab, for example, like this. To create an array of int, we do int tab. It's a variable, in fact, and I'll put it in public. So it's a variable, and if I want to create an array, well, next to int, I'll put a square bracket, square bracket. It means I've created an array. Look what's going to happen. I go back to Unity, and you'll see the difference between a variable and an array. If I look here, you can see that my array, it's not like a variable. It has a little arrow that unfolds, and here I can click on the little plus, and again, and as much as I want. Now, actually, I can add drawers to my array, and I'll be able to store elements. I can put random numbers like this, and here I have an array with 10 elements, and in my array we have 10 values that are stored. So the constraint of an array is that you have to store things of the same type. So I've created an array of int. But I can create an array of floats, I can create an array of booleans, I can create an array of strings. The constraint is that each time what you store in a drawer of an array has to be of the right type. To modify something in the array, for example, if I want to modify the third element, knowing that we start counting from 0, that's very important to remember. We start counting from 0. That means that the first element is element 0. The second element is element 1. And so if we want to modify the third element of the array, I have to say tab 2, which corresponds to my third element. I can say that tab2 is equal to 42. And that allows me to modify the value of element number 2 of my array. I'm going to click on the cube. As the array is in public, I can see everything. We can see that the third element is indeed element number 2, since the first element is element number 0. The third element, which is in fact element number 2, has a value of 6, and there you see that the value increases to 42 because we have modified its value on the fly. So that's how you modify the content of an array. The good thing is that we can use loops. I can do for int I equal 0, as long as I is smaller than 5, for example, if I want to look at the first 5 items, I++. So here I do a little loop, and then I do a tab print of I, knowing that I will successively take the value 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, this will make a print tab of 0, then a print of 1, 2, 3, 4. I save, I go in Unity, and we'll see what happens. I run the game. We have 8, 5, 6, 9, 4. I look in my console, I've got 8, 5, 42, because we've modified it, 9, and 4. So it worked. We made our loop. But I can have an array with as many entries as I want. In fact, it can be totally random. How do you loop through the whole array if you don't know how many elements there are? In this case, I've put 5 elements at random, but if I don't know how many elements there are in my array, how I can do it? There is a loop called the for each loop. For each is another type of loop. For each what? Well, for each int, I'm going to call, for example, val for value, for each value of type int in. So for every value int in tab, so for every integer in my array, I'll do a print of val. So this will loop through all the elements of my array, and val will take successively the various values contained in my array. And then I do a print to display these values. We'll test. So there are about 15 values in the array. We launch the project. And then if you look at the console, you can see all the values that appear here. I let you test all this on your own because I'm not going to list them one by one. But it seems to work well. So this is how you can create something in which you can store potentially an infinite number of values. It's always limited by, well, just by the power of your computer, the relative memory that you have, but potentially unlimited. And that's how you can loop through all of those elements. The nice thing about arrays is that there are lots of functions that you can use. I'll refer you to the documentation, but you can do a tab dot, and when I do tab dot, in a sense suggests everything I can do. If I look a little bit, we have tab dot length, which will give me the size, the length of the array. I'm going to write a print tab dot length. This will allow me to display the size of the array on the screen. I do tab dots, and then I look at what is proposed. You can find different functionalities like that by looking at what is suggested to you. For example, tab.clone allows you to clone an array, as its name suggests, so that you can have a perfect copy. We can create a sorting algorithm to sort the elements of our array. In short, there are many things possible. I'm going to start by making it very simple. I'm just going to display the size of the array. I'm going to launch the project, and then we'll see what happens. It will appear at the bottom. We see that we have 15. You can see that there are 15 here, and if I look, I have 15 elements in my array, so it seems to work well once again. Well, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the arrays, we'll come back to that later, but there's one very important thing I forgot to tell you. You've seen that sometimes I create variables here, int var1 is equal to 5, for example, and sometimes I've created variables in there, in start, int var2 is equal to 10, and then we can also do it if true. We're necessarily getting into the if. I can do int var3 is equal to 40. What I want to say is that variables have a scope. If you create a variable here in your class, directly at the root of your class, that variable will be accessible everywhere. That means that in the start function, you can do a print of var1, and that will work. Variable 1 is a global variable, accessible globally in your program, no matter where you are. If I do an update, you can access your variable 1 here without any problem. On the other hand, variable 2 was created inside a block. What I call a block is between two curly brackets. Variable 2 was created in the start function, so it's only accessible within the start function. You can print variable 2 here, no problem. You can print variable 2 in the if, no problem, because the if is inside the start function. However, the variable 2 that was created in start cannot be accessed in update. Update does not know about this variable 2. The same goes for variable 3. It was created inside the if block. You can't access it outside the if block. That's an important concept to remember. Variables have a scope. They can be global or local. Global accessible in the whole class, and local accessible in the function in which the variable was created. You'll have to remember this concept, this notion. Now, we're going to stop here for this video. Once again, try to remember everything we've covered in this tutorial, and we'll meet again in the next video.